So it does look like quite a lot to get through, but it's quite straightforward, and later on we'll get on to some past paper questions that have been set. So the product life cycle just describes the stages that a product will move through, and it's tracking sales against time. So this is, broadly speaking, what a product life cycle will look like. Now, important to remember, all product life cycles will be different in terms of these stages will last for different amounts of time, and they might have quite sharp increases in sales and sharp declines in sales as well. But broadly speaking, they go through these 5 stages. So research and development, introduction, growth, maturity, and decline. But as I said before, they can last different times. So what's important, sometimes you get a question that says describe the product life cycle. So I'd always draw a product life cycle. Remember, get your axes right, sales against time. But they don't just want a description of what you draw, and they want some information about what is happening within the business during these different stages. So what's happening with sales figures, spending on advertising, customer awareness, and number of competitors. These are just 4 things that I've chosen, but you could look at other things as well. So during development, they're not selling any, there's no sales figures at all, so they're making no revenue. They're not spending anything on advertising because they've not brought out a product yet. They're just developing the product and testing the product and seeing if it works. Customers are not aware of the product, and there are no competitors if indeed this is a new product that they've brought out. During introduction, sales figures are very low. Trying to make, it's introducing it to market, so trying to make customers aware of the product. So it might be very high spending on advertising. You may be doing things like penetration pricing to get customers interested in your product. But there'll be low customer awareness, and there probably won't be very many competitors because you've just brought out this product, and it'll take them a little bit of time to realise what you're doing and copy you if it's successful. So during growth, your sales figures are growing rapidly. Your spending is quite high on advertising, but maybe not as much as during the introduction because you're starting to get a little bit of a following. So you might get rid of those introductory deals. You may still, it depends on the product really. Customer awareness is growing, and it's getting to a high point, and competitors may start to emerge, and you may start to get some, so you've got increasing number of competitors. Maturity, your sales figures are peaked, they're going to reach a plateau, they're going to level out. Spending on advertising, you still might have some spending, very much based on loyalty programs to get those customers to repeat purchase, but it's very much lower than it was before, and it's a different strategy. Customer awareness is high, and there are a lot of competitors. And then we see in the decline, we maybe have falling sales figures. Depends on what you're planning to do during the decline, whether you're just going to let it die or you're going to try and do an extension strategy. So you might increase spending on advertising to boost sales. You might come out with a reboot of the branding, say, which would be spending on marketing, but probably involves, or definitely involves, some spending on advertising. Customer awareness is very, very high. It might be one of those products that's just kind of always been in your life, like dairy milk, chocolate bars, everyone's aware of them. But the number of competitors may be high, but if the market is going into a trend of falling sales, they may be falling as well and moving on to other things. So as I said before, there are different product life cycles. So these are some that my students have drawn, and this would be a fad. So it comes along very quickly, very high sales, but doesn't last for very long. This is a product your line would continue across here, just to add, but this is a product with quite a long R&D. This is meant to be a flat line, by the way, but R&D period, and then it just shoots up with little introduction. So very, very popular. People know about that. Maybe if you've got like that really steep incline, it shouldn't, by the way, be bending back on itself there, but if you've got a really steep incline, maybe you need to think about doing price skimming as a strategy, because you've already got demand for the product before it's released. Here's one that could be a revival product, so it comes into fashion, goes out of fashion, comes back into fashion, or maybe a seasonal product as well. So we can actually track cash flow against our product life cycle as well, and we do a section on cash flow, but just as a brief introduction, it's cash in minus your cash out. So it goes beneath the line because this is taking into account the cash going out of the business, so it'll take into account costs as well. So during development, it's very, very expensive. So you're just getting into, you're just having cash leave the business, not enter it. And then you start to have some sales, so you start to see that pick up. And then it declines with it as well. So that would represent cash flow. Remember, it'll go below the zero line here of sales really is representing the cash flow as well. So during development, as we said, you're testing prototypes, there's no cash in, and so you've got a cash flow negative position. Lots of advertising as well, so probably negative in introduction. You might, halfway through growth, start to see it going positive. Depends on the product, depends on what's in the case study, so read that case study quite carefully and see what they say. Do they give you any clues about when it starts to go positive? Maturity, it's going to be at its highest level. And then it depends upon the extension strategy, or whether you are using an extension strategy, whether you have cash going out. You might just cut all spending on it because you just want to get that cash in. Even though it's falling, you're still getting cash in. So let's have a look at some extension strategies where you try and extend the life of a product. So I'm just going to go through a few here, but really the answer, the key to answering questions like this is thinking about what's logical, what have you seen in the past before. So you could find new markets for your products. So this is looking at ANSOS matrix really, which is something you look at the A2 course. You might try and sell the existing product that you have to a new market. So here we've got somebody in China holding up a Manchester United ticket. So Manchester United, I think, toured some stadiums in China. So trying to get new fans out of a new market. You might widen your product range. So it used to only be this type of Lucozade, but then it widened out to this kind of still orange, a bit like a cordial, I suppose, and this one that I haven't tasted myself, but you know, they widen their product range. You might want to target certain segments. So if you, this is an old web page, but if you're opening up this web page for a NatWest bank account, you've got different bank accounts, which, you know, bank accounts been around for years and years and years, but different segments, different types of bank accounts aimed at different segments maybe of the market. So not just looking as we go for kind of new markets of people, but just different types of people, altering it slightly to fit those people. You could just change the appearance, the packaging of it. You could encourage people to use this product more frequently. I'm not going to click on this video, but it's a video about well, it's an advert of Cocoa Pops, and I'm not going to sing it, but there's a little boy coming home from school, and it's like Cocoa Pops after school, or something like cereal after school, and it's a famous song on there, which I'm not going to sing, but it's about why are they doing that? Why are they trying to sell cereal as an after school snack? Because if you have it in breakfast time and after school, you're going to use it up twice as quickly, so you have to buy more of it. You could change the ingredients or the components. That's quite similar to that one, really. Or you could update the designs of it as well. And there's a new one of those. I know that's because my husband bought one, and I've not seen him as much this month actually. He's been quite busy playing on his games in front of the TV, so he seems to like it. So what are the benefits of using a product lifecycle? Well, it can predict the broad trends in revenue and in costs, and this is very important for your finance department, and this is very important for your planning as well, because at a time when your cash flow is going to be very negative, you're not going to want too many products to be maybe coming out at the same time, because that's very expensive in terms of development, but also in terms of the promotion of it. So you might want to time these products, and you don't want to become too dependent on one product, because all of the products' life cycles show them eventually going into decline. So you need to know when maybe, or you need to be able to predict when your product's going to go into decline and when you're going to need an extension strategy, maybe even preempt that point happening. So it can really help with planning and giving you an idea of the types of things that should be happening at certain stages. You could even come up with a projected product life cycle And then you can measure the product against that kind of target after and see if you're outperforming your predictions or underperforming those predictions, and maybe try and do something about those underperformances. However, it's just a generic tool, really. This is what most products do. Maybe if you were going to make it a little bit more specific, you look at this is what the life cycle of most soft drinks is, so you could make it a bit more applicable, but it doesn't predict what's actually going to happen to your product. There may be differences with your product. It may outperform the normal product life cycle, it might underperform. So every life cycle is very, very different, and it may even become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So because you think you're going to go into a decline stage of the product life cycle, you might actually cause your product to go into a decline stage of a product life cycle, because if you think it's going into a decline stage, you might cut back on all your advertising, and then what's that going to do? Well, that's probably going to help it go into a decline stage. So you've got to be really careful that it's, well, it could be a self-fulfilling prophecy in the right way. If you think it's going to be successful, and you promote it and you really push it, it could work that way. But you know, the problem comes at that decline stage. So here are a few questions. I think this might be from a legacy paper. So the specification just before the specification for this exam set came out, but they're quite similar questions, and it says describe with the aid of a diagram Nutrigrain's product life cycle. This was a question quite recently, actually, not for Nutrigrain, for another question. I think it was for Mars, actually, and it was an 8-mark question. So they do ask these big mark describe questions sometimes, and explain the changes to Nutrigrain's marketing mix which Kellogg's might have considered when deciding on its extension strategy. So nice things that you think about, 6 marks there. So how could we change the packaging, the product, the place, the promotion? That's what you always need to think about, all those P's when you think about the marketing mix. You don't have the case study, obviously, but this is what some of the marks they give awarded for. And in the case study, it talks about times, so you could put times along the bottom to make it a little bit more accurate. But what's interesting is the examiner's report. So it's somewhat surprising to witness so many product life cycle diagrams poorly drawn and carelessly labelled. It's really, you know, poor form not to label your diagrams correctly. That's very important. The vertical axis was often incorrectly labelled, and on many occasions no extension strategy was incorporated into the diagram. So make sure you can draw this diagram. Make sure you can draw this diagram based on the information that they're giving you. So define what product life cycle is and be able to label and draw it with the different stages. Or this one hasn't shown the stages then, but to be able to talk about what's happening, you do need to know what these different stages are, although this doesn't seem like it had any development stage because it starts with introduction there. Explain how businesses can use extension strategies, explain the relationship between product lifecycle and cash flow, explain how businesses can make use of it and the limitations of it as well. So good luck with that section.